Sean Penn went on Conan O'Brien's show and got into a discussion about Dick Cheney. This is an awesome moment because you never see this kind of brutal takedown on TV.
I saw backstage in your opening monologue that you mentioned Dick Cheney, this kind of, embittered bacteria of humanity, who, and I think about it. It's always a surprise to me to remember that through bionic technology and so on, this guy's still here, and still not given the credit, and I wanted to give him the credit since you mentioned him. I mean, these are the guys, he and President Bush and some others, who invented Daesh or ISIS. I mean, they really are that which created it. So I wanted to give him a shout out. Thanks for that.
You want to give credit where credit's due.
That's right. But then we've had people like Harvey Milk, who were beautiful, brilliant, impactful guys, and it's just no good deed will go unpunished. And then you got the Cheneys. This is just me musing.
Yeah.
God damn. Yeah, the point about ISIS is one we don't make nearly enough. And I want to just clarify that real quick, or add on to that a little bit, because when he says that, I don't think he means it in the conspiracy theory, Alex Jonesy kind of way of like, they want them to exist, and they purposely built them up, and they actually like Islamic fundamentalism because the Illuminati and the NWO and the Bilderbergs and One World Government and something. No, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is they invented ISIS, as in they created ISIS, and they did it by a series of fuck-ups and all these different incompetent actions and terrible foreign policy blunders, and as a result of that, outstepped this monster ISIS. And that's true. In fact, if anybody who is really well-versed in the whole situation with Iraq knows very well, that's actually indisputable. So what happened is, we went in there in 2003, toppled Saddam Hussein, and we de-Baathified the government. Now, the Baathists are relatively secular Sunnis, and they're not good guys. Saddam Hussein wasn't a good guy, but he did stabilize the region, and he wasn't a religious fundamentalist. For all of his flaws, he was not a religious fundamentalist. So we kicked the Sunni Baathists out of government, and then we brought in the Shias. And what happened is, under the Sunnis, everybody else was repressed. Everybody who wasn't Sunni was repressed. But then, when we got rid of the Baathists, the Sunnis, and we put in the Shias, the exact opposite happened. So we just flipped the repression. And then we had the Maliki government and the Shias brutally repressing the Sunnis. So what happened as a result of that? Well, you have a whole bunch of angry people who are military masterminds who used to be in government, now they're out of government, and they're really fucking pissed off, and they feel like they lost their country, which, by the way, is a fake country made by Britain in the 1930s. So who do they turn to? Well, they kind of make an allegiance with other Sunnis who they don't really agree with on everything, and that thing being fundamentalist religion. So the relatively secular Sunni Baathists linked up with ISIS, the Sunni fundamentalists, because they have a bigger enemy, the Shias, and then they started marauding all around the Middle East. And to put the fucking cherry on top, where did they get their weapons from? Us. Why? Because when we went in there and we did the Iraq War, when we left, or at least pulled back, we left behind all these weapons in all the areas where these guys are. So there were tanks, and there were Humvees, and there were small arms, and there were all these different things. And they basically looked at each other and were like, this is, really? They left these behind? Great. Thanks! And then they took it, and the rest is history. They went into Syria, they're further in Iraq now, and they got pretty fucking close to the capital. So if it wasn't for the original sin, if it wasn't for the original blunder, they wouldn't exist. There's no question about it. Now, does that mean that the ideology of Islamic fundamentalism wouldn't exist? No, of course not. That's going to exist no matter what, to some extent. But the problem is, it wouldn't exist in as high a volume as it does, and they wouldn't be as heavily armed as they are if it weren't for our fuck-up. And oh yeah, when you kill 200,000 civilians, you tend to further radicalize the region a little bit and make people turn more to those groups because those are the only groups saying, we will protect you against the big bad Americans. So while Sean Penn may not be very artful in his delivery, and I take it a lot of people kind of cringed when he said that stuff, the heart of what he's saying is absolutely correct.